Well, I guess the question perhaps on everyone's minds, maybe not expressed, will be, does it get any harder than this? Well, amid the continuing hardship, some have experienced the rains. In fact, the storms of it, while some are experiencing the scorching sun. So whatever climate it is, there's always an opportunity for investment. And somebody right beside you may just need your investment of kindness. Yes, your investment of kindness is what is needed at this point in time. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. I am Bukola Koka, who is always, by the way, blessed among men. Good morning, guys.
Good morning to you, Bukola.
Yeah.
I hope you have feel now in your heart.
You didn't ask me yesterday, you asked me today.
No, I know you had complained that your fuel is about to run out, so I just wanted to be sure you're fine.
Okay, so you're already investing in kindness. Thank you, Jeffrey. I have fuel in my car now, but do you also want to pay for it?
No, I don't mind. Welcome to the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
Don't worry, I'll be the umpire. I'll tell you when he has paid for the petrol. Okay? Don't worry, I'll sort this out for you. But welcome to the show. We're up bright and early as always. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Absolutely, guys. So I bought fuel yesterday, but I don't know whether the shenanigans of the fuel scarcity that we saw, that inexplicable logistics problem that NNPC didn't explain well for us, whether it all ended in the increase in the prices of fuel. The regular places I buy for 640, 610, 640, let me say 640. I went there yesterday and I bought for 820, no, 830. So I had to ask the attendant, I said, is this a new price? And she was, yeah, it's a new price. I was like, okay. Because there were no car, what do you call it, no queues, nothing. Just, you know, you can just drive in and buy, but at a higher price. So what's your experience? Are the prices higher where you are now?
Well, absolutely. I think if you want to buy for the regular price, you'll have to endure the queues. I think it varies really. And it's also a pointer to the back and forth and the, well, I say flip-flops that we've seen. So this is meant to be a fully deregulated industry, right? But then we see that the government from time to time intervenes. We've heard that again. So it's not full subsidy removal, it's controlled subsidy, particularly for Forex. So it looks like now...
you call it managed floating?
Managed floating, right. So it looks like now the government has given some sort of laxity to the marketers, the petrol station owners, to add some extra costs so that they can make profit. Remember, we had the Ip-Man man on the show recently who was saying that, well, the Ip-Man Association doesn't get as much petrol as it used to get compared to the major marketers. So major marketers can afford to sell at the official price while they naturally have to hike their prices to make profit because they don't get directly from the NNPCL anymore. So it's like controlled and not controlled. And I think, again, it's important, as we've said, for government to be clear on what they're up to, really. But while that is ongoing, something that caught my attention, guys, which we talked about, is the aftermath of the renovation of the National Assembly. Remember that Senator Ndume yesterday was saying that it was a poor job done. Now, there's been a lot of reactions to that. Nigerians were saying on the one hand that, oh, yeah, welcome to the club. Some projects we see in our area, and we tell you it's poor job done. They fix roads 2 weeks after it's eroded. They fix street lights 2 weeks after the solar is no more working. And they can go on and on. Or they renovate a school and it's leaking just on the day that the children resume. So Nigerians are saying, well, this is what we're used to, but it's mind-boggling because of the amount budgeted for this. From 9 billion to 19 billion to 30 billion naira said to have been budgeted for this. You can't afford to do a poor job with that kind of money.
Well, if you look at the newly renovated National Assembly, offices where they preside, hold plenary, it leaves a little more to be desired. It's a departure, from the elegance of the former halls of the National Assembly. There's something quite off, not particularly because one is agreeing with the complaints of the senators about sitting arrangements, but because of the optics, what it looks like. Elite politicians do not have very much to worry about if you consider that the Senate President has already said that, a second look will be taking at it and perhaps another round of renovation work will be done. And that's different from what Nigerians experience, with poor infrastructure, poor basic amenities. There's some lack of it in the first place. So there you have it. If you ask me, I'd say should we spend another round of funds on another renovation of the halls of the National Assembly?
Well, ours is that, dear distinguished senators, you have to manage it. We've been managing the things you've been doing for the last how many years, so manage it. The only thing I think I like about the new renovated work is I think it has a better backrest,
right.
It's higher, but for some people uncomfortable with the podium-like seating, there's the argument. Then all of these names that have been put there, at this point, we're supposed to have passed this level. Why can't we have electronic like we have in the State House? So that names can be switched at any point. Now, it's a stationary name. You're like a resident.
Well, you can always remove it.
You remove it. Take it home or something. So those things by now, I don't know whether the voting system has been done.
No, he said it's not been done.
It's not been
about
done.
The sound system, the voting system.
So I don't know, at this level, we should not be having names being carried around or being pasted the way they are pasted. Those things are supposed to be electronic, where the person's name and even his senatorial district can be there, just like if you go to the State
House.
Yeah. State House, whoever comes to visit the president, you see that it's reflected there and all of that. So, well, we empathize with you, distinguished senators, but that's what we deal with as Nigerians when people in government do shoddy jobs. So you have to manage it and sort your issues out. But
the minister of the FCT, the FCDA, the contractor, I understand, is Messrs. Visible Construction Company Limited, and others who are involved have a lot of answering to do. That is too much money spent for it to be described as poor.
For the purpose of the Nigerian populace who own that building, because it's the people's house, something has to be done. But for the politicians, just bear with us. That's what we say. And then there's another issue. I was listening to the radio. You see what's going on in Togo. Sometimes I don't know what is going wrong with African leaders. Are we going forward or going backward? President Nasibe, who had just won that election, he has been there 19 years. For the record, he's been there for 19 years. And then afterwards, that controversial law he signed, or constitution that allowed him to contest. Now they've signed another controversial constitution, and this time it allows only the parliament to decide who becomes the president or prime minister, whatever name it is called, in that country. That means totally cutting out the people from the entire process of leadership in the country. Well, we're looking at Togo and what's going on, but it's absolutely unacceptable by the standard of democracy. Bwala, what do we have?
Quite a lot this morning, but we're starting with, what seems to be important for Nigerians. That's the current state of the nation, and, there's so many challenges that they have to grapple with. They're already groaning beneath the weight of rising costs of petrol and higher increases in the price of commodities. Another increase added to that weight is the 0.5% cybersecurity levy, which the CBN has directed banks to implement on all electronic transactions. Of course, there are some exceptions, but this comes as Nigerians grapple with increases in electricity tariff, lingering petrol scarcity. So what's the federal government's overall objective amid worrying indicators?
Well, it's not just that. The rain, go away appeal may or may not be heeded by the rainmaker this year, depending on the part of the country where the appeal is emanating from. An important point to note, if you consider the rainfall prediction of early onset of rains for a number of states in the north, and we also have a few in the south, Ogun State being one of them. And with the rains come the fear of flooding, especially when it is predicted to last a whole 239 days. What's Ogun State's flood prevention plan, as well as other states of the country? We'll find out right here on the Morning Brief.
Oh yes, we're not letting that issue just lie. It's very important to talk about it because we've started seeing the floods, and the signs we're seeing in some parts, they are not encouraging at all. So let us know if you've started seeing some moving parts in your area. Are the drainage is being cleared? Is waste management optimum? Are you getting the warnings as you ought to, whether on the usual channels, maybe your WhatsApp group, your estate, radio, and the rest? We need to ensure that we build the layers appropriately. But here's the interesting part. You can also be a part of the show by sending in your message, your videos, contents essentially, to that number right there on your screen. It's the fastest and easiest way to get through to us on the show. You can also do it on social media, hashtag CTV Morning Brave. So we're here for you to ensure that your voices are heard, your voices are part of this conversation which concerns you anyway. So how about you do this together with us?
And speaking of the weather, do you reside in any of those areas that bear proximity with Lagos in terms of borders? I'm talking about Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Ikorodu Road, and you experience that annual flooding, sometimes once a year, twice a year, that is not necessarily caused by the rains. This would be a good opportunity for you to share your experience with us as you post at us on all platforms, X, Instagram, Facebook, because this is the time to have that conversation. Speaking of which, we will be beginning with the top stories after this time out, after which we'll review your thoughts on the major stories on the program. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Morning Brief. Time now to review some of the big stories, starting with security. We're counting too many resolutions on security, but without commensurate results. This is the position of members of the House of Representatives who voiced their frustration over the failure of relevant authorities to implement numerous House resolutions aimed at tackling insecurity across the country. They maintain that efforts made as contribution to the national debate on how best to address the menace of insecurity have not been considered helpful. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has commenced investigations into what the lawmakers describe as arbitrary increase in the price of cement.
This might be the fourth time that we will be observing 1 minute silence this morning. If you recall, in our last meeting, we were almost tagging our country, one Nigerian life, 1 minute silence. I think that we should look at all our resolution that has to do with insecurity, all the resolutions. Let us put them together and begin to ensure compliance with some of these resolutions. Because we arrive at resolutions day in, day out, and nothing happens.
This House must have a position paper from constituents, particularly in the security-prone areas, on the issue of employing or bringing back mercenaries to finish security issues in this country so that investors can come in and invest.
This hearing arises from the House of Representatives' deep concern for the people it represents and the need for transparent engagement with key stakeholders in the cement industry, particularly the manufacturers.
Nigeria's price of cement doubles that of India at a difference of 69%. Similarly, the price is 29% higher than that in Kenya and 39% higher than that in Zambia.
Staying with the National Assembly, a decade after the launch of the Abuja centenary city, the Senate has opened an investigation into the failed project, which the 10th Assembly is seeking to revive. The sponsor of the motion, Senator Ashiru Yilola, representing Kwara South, notes that the original estimated investment for the project in 2014 was $18.5 billion. The Senate therefore set up an ad hoc committee chaired by the Deputy Senate President to also review the agreement and facilitate an expeditious completion.
Completing Abuja centenary city project, we have immense benefits for Nigeria, including job creation, elevating Nigerian profile as an attractive investment destination for foreign investment.
If we do this and it takes off, it will be a big achievement to the 10th Senate.
As it is today, given the state of Nigerian economy, given the abysmal revenue base of Nigerian economy today, I don't think the federal government is in a position to inject any additional fund into that place. And in doing that, I also want to call on the Federal Ministry of Finance to put together a team of investment bankers worldwide. Most of these projects of this nature are driven by the private sector.
Abuja is already getting congested, and if this is done, I think it will help. So we must take it very seriously. Set up an ad hoc committee to urgently investigate the factors impeding the completion of the centenary city project in Abuja and recommend ways of reviving same. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3, urge the federal government to prioritize the revival of the Abuja Centenary City project by providing appropriate support, resolving regulatory issues, and addressing any other impediments.
Meanwhile, the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, says foreigners are earning more from mining the nation's solid minerals than Nigerians. President of the Senate stated this on Tuesday when he declared open an investigative hearing to review activities in Nigeria's mining industry, primarily geared towards diversification of the economy.
We are gathered here with a shared purpose to ask the very tough questions and seek answers, those that will shape the future of this great nation. We must dare to ask and investigate why our national economy continues to rely solely on crude oil. Why can't we infuse our economy with the richness of our solid minerals that abound across the entire nation and liberate ourselves from the shackles of oil dependence, and even liberate ourselves from insecurity caused by illegal mining? We can no longer overlook the immense potential of the mining sector in this country. The mining sector should by now become a major cornerstone to enable the country to earn foreign exchange, to even be a catalyst for social inclusion and empowerment of the populace. But as usual, just like fishing, more foreigners are earning for our mining sector than Nigerians. Instead, what they leave us with are stories of wars, tales of killings, tales of pursuit of owners of properties in order to enter and mine illegally, and the process compounding the security situation of our country.
And to politics now, in Rivers State, to be precise, where the state chapter of the All Progressives Congress has demanded that members of the House of Assembly commence impeachment proceedings against Governor Simlai Fubara. The party's caretaker chairman, Tony Okocha, said this at a press conference in Port Harcourt, where he reacted to the governor's comment that the state Assembly members remain in the House as a result of his resolve to keep to the peace accord brokered by the president. He further threatened that if the Assembly members fail to restart the impeachment proceedings against the governor, he would invoke the party's disciplinary action on them.
A member, in fact, is the leader of our own political party. And it would be foolhardy, to be stupidity on our part to sit down to see somebody way less than Mr. President insult Mr. President under our very nose. It is also an absurd to see the governor begin to espouse impunity, intimidation on the people who are members of our political party, and we stand akimbo, doing nothing. We will sit here to see the governor declare on his own, as if it's a court. He has become Daniel that is sitting in judgment to declare assembly member seats vacant. To that extent, in consultation with my party, we have directed and we are directing, I want to let you hear, that we are directing the assembly members, APC members who are in the assembly, to immediately commence the impeachment of Governor Sim Fubara.
As far as Rivers politics is concerned, there are more surprises to come in the coming days. And that's not all from Rivers. Elder statesman and leader of the Pan-Niger Delta Development Forum, PANDEF, Chief Edwin Clark, has written to the Inspector General of Police asking him to forestall a breakdown of law and order in Rivers State. The Niger Delta leader says the political situation is capable of snowballing into a crisis of national proportion if not properly handled by the police. In the open letter read to journalists at a news conference in Abuja, he urges the Inspector General of Police to advise President Tinubu on the development in the state. More politics away from Rivers this time. The senator representing Ondo South Senatorial District, Senator Jimo Ibrahim, is lamenting the outcome of the All Progressives Congress Ondo 2024 governorship primary election held on April the 20th, 2024, describing the exercise as a mega fraud. Senator Ibrahim, who briefed Senate correspondents on the outcome of the exercise, pointed out that the elections did not hold, and he wants a fresh exercise to be conducted or the party be barred from participating in the election proper later in the year. And 1 week after he was taken from his Lagos residence by armed men who turned out to be policemen, Mr. Daniel Ojukwu, a journalist with an online news platform, the Foundation for Investigative Journalism, FIJ, remains in police custody despite calls for his release. His lawyer, Mr. Bwala Ojenike, told Channels Television that Mr. Ojukwu was taken from his Lagos residence on Wednesday, May the 1st, based on an order from the Office of the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun. The lawyer adds that the reporter has been denied access to his counsel and relocated to the Force Criminal Investigation Department in Abuja. Reacting to the outcry over the arrests, Force spokesman Mr. Muiwa Adejobi says Mr. Ojukwu has a case to answer and his arrest was based on a petition against him. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Union of Journalists, the Nigeria National Committee of the International Press Institute, IPI Nigeria, and other civil society organizations and activists have criticized Mr. Ojukwu's arrest and called for his release. Well, it's only fair that this would be a good time for, the case hovering over Mr. Ojukwu's head be explained in proper terms so that Nigerians can know the justification for his arrest. Away from that now, the presidency has announced that President Bola Tinubu and his aides will return to Nigeria from Europe today. A post by the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, on his X handle says the president and his aides will return to Nigeria from Europe on Wednesday, and the president departed on April the 22nd for the Kingdom of the Netherlands on an official visit, and after the engagements in the Netherlands, he proceeded to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia to attend a special World Economic Forum meeting between April the 28th and the 29th. A quick touch on business. The Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, has said that point-of-sale agents of major fintechs in Nigeria, including OPay, PalmPay, and MoneyPoint, among others, must have registered their businesses by July the 7th, 2024. The Registrar General of the CAC, Mr. Hussaini Magaji, who disclosed this in a statement issued by the Commission, said this was the agreement with the POS operators after a meeting in Abuja on Monday. According to him, the registrations are also in line with the legal requirements and the directives of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And outside our shores, the Israeli military says its troops have taken operational control of the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Rafah has been a key entry point for aid and the only exit for people able to flee since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas in October. A tank brigade moved into the crossing area after a night of intense strikes, with Israel's Kerem Shalom crossing also closed. The UN warned Gaza's two main aid arteries were now choked off. On Tuesday, the White House said it had been told Kerem Shalom would reopen on Wednesday. And that's it on the top stories. Now we move to some of what you're saying about the big stories. And Jeffrey joins me to do just that.
Absolutely. So, for that, the one in focus is our colleague whose crime or offense
is not yet known.
We're yet to get clarity as to all of that. So all of this, at the end of the day, is what we're going to be talking about. We've talked about this over and over again in terms of, what do you call it now? That we are in a democracy. We're in a democracy. So it is important that whatever Mr. Ojukwu has done, at least the press should be able to be aware exactly what he has done. But we keep saying it's unacceptable that he was arrested or picked up, whatever name you call it, 48 hours or so, incommunicado with his family, his friends and colleagues and all of that. Later we found out that he was with the police. The same thing happened with the other gentleman, I keep forgetting his name. Just barely a month ago, the similar thing happened. His whereabouts was not found, and then later found out he was with the army and all of that. Those are Gestapo, all of those forms of arrest. It's unacceptable in a democracy. Because given the situation of the country when it comes to insecurity, anybody can pick up anybody. So if you're arresting someone as a law enforcement agent, the decent thing to do is to be able to say, look, we've picked up this guy for X, Y, Z reason, and follow through with the process, whatever it is, charge him, whatever it is, follow due process. Don't just
it's only clear. It's an infringement on his fundamental human rights when you hold him without justification, without a proper explanation about what his offense is.
So we'll continue to say whether you're the police or the army or the way, thank you for your service, but it's a democracy, you have to respect the rule of law. We need to chip that in. So we're hoping that that clarity will come through maybe later today in the week. But let's get to what you are saying on X. The first is the CBN ordered banks operating in Nigeria to start charging cyber security levy on transaction. The background to this is that law has been there since 2015 or so, but it was amended, in 2024. But there's about 16 exemptions to that law, and a lot of people are reacting to this particular law. Some of the Sherlock Einstein says, how delightful. So now they've ordered banks to start charging cyber security levy on transaction because, why not add another fee to the already long list of charges that people have to endure?
There's been an outcry, trailing that news from yesterday. The question is, the EFCC is empowered to also tackle financial crimes, isn't it? And the EFCC does have a budget. So why this? What's the justification for this additional levy? Something to reflect on, especially since the directive is coming from the.
I think this is going to be domiciled in the NSA's office.
The NSA's office should also have a budget. It's just important to ask these questions. Right. But this one is also coming from Aminu Said, who says, charging levy and taxes on Nigerians is not the problem, but seeing and feeling its impact is the problem. Every single one of us is paying, but we really can't tell what they do with it.
That's a big question. So many charges, so many levies, but we must say there are 16 exemptions. I can't go through all of the exemptions. Maybe we'll list it later on, but Nigerians are just exhausted and tired of all of these levies and levies and levies. Omar says this is good development if the purpose will be served and the fund of customers will also be secured thoroughly.
And so this next one is coming from, I believe, Valencia, who's saying, this is the situation we found ourselves in Nigeria now, with taxable government with no results or impact on citizens. Oh. Well, I guess Valencia means a government that keeps on taxing, not necessarily a taxable government. Okay. Because who's taxing the government?
Okay, now let's get to CBN again, issuing a July 7 deadline for all POS operators to register with the Corporate Affairs Commission. Olushola Oye says, what are the conditions for operating POS to collect and pay? It can only happen in Nigeria that the POS is seen as a business without any regulation. All payment agents are supposed to be regulated and pay taxes. We're used to not doing the proper thing. That is why this shocks us. I think that's it.
Well, interesting reaction there. This next one is from Ajuba101, who says, instead of government asking for POS registration, why don't they build ATMs in almost every street? Imagine if ATMs were in every corner and they are functioning. You can make more money than asking for POS operators, to register. I guess that's what he means.
All right, lawyer Masters says it is a criminal offense if you're doing business in Nigeria as a company or partnership with a company without registration, except expects that you are exempted from registration. Section 863 Companies and Allied Matters Act. I think he's quoting the CSE Act.
Well, you know, that's a big one for us to reflect on. That means that anyone, you know, could have up until this point walked into a bank and you know, picked up a form for POS service and, you know, start business, but the person could be one of questionable character. You know, so that's
but the banks will give this POS. I'm sure they have a registration process that tracks, and they get, you know, some incentive or levies they charge these POS guys. So it's not totally that they are out of the financial system. They are not trackable or so. I don't think so. But this is just do things properly. But
it's a big loophole still properly. If you consider reports, you know, that some crimes have been perpetrated by kidnappers who bring POS machines and, you know, collect payment via that mode. So let's go to this next one, which is from Eraser, who says POS operators will be scarce. Artificial currency scarcity might hit soon due to timing. Banking hall to be overwhelmed with operators and non-operators due to business identity for operators. Business owners dumping machine due to identity crisis in receiving payment. Which way?
Okay, there's a lot to talk about, but let's go straight to the Microsoft ADC center that we're hearing from industry people that will be shut down. 200 jobs at risk. So it's an initiative of Microsoft that is domiciled in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, and Nairobi, Kenya. So Damilare says the annoying part is that when other businesses start panicking because of this, even proposed companies will pause and think twice.
Well, and this one is from Joseph Olarinwaju, who says companies are leaving Nigeria. The government makes no steps to find solution to revamp this negative movement and to even create more manufacturing jobs. Nigeria, as a regional power, ought to be producing and exporting to other countries to boost her foreign reserve.
All right, so there's a lot going on in the country. Let's also tell you that the House of Representatives has summoned Dangote, Bwala, and other cement companies to appear within 14 days regarding increase in cement prices. By the way, where do you buy your cement? How much is it? Valencia Acute again says, remember Dangote was also summoned during Jonathan's administration regarding the hike in price of cement, but nothing came out. Rather, the price of cement lifted ASAP immediately after it was summoned, and immediately he produced 3x cement, is it 3 times cement, as he faces competition in the market with other producers of cement.
Well, this next one is from Abu Gado, who says, government must also check the policies and the tax regime on private investment. Government initially owns most of the cement companies, but unfortunately couldn't manage it successfully, and private sector has taken over. So where will government be trying to detect now? I guess they're referring to the invitation such that they want to investigate the increasing price of cement. We'll see how that goes. But government has a lot to worry about, particularly with continuing divestment of businesses in the country. So,
well, those are the things we're tracking for you. Oligopoly in the cement sector, people losing jobs, and well, there's a gamut of issues. But it's our country, we need to make it work. But that's the conversation. State of the Nation is next, right here on the Morning Brief. Join us again.
25 states are within that flood-prone area in Nigeria, and they're at risk of flooding. We've seen some heads up, it would seem, earlier in the year, in February, and it's important to keep these conversations on so that we're not caught unawares. The National Emergency Management Agency yesterday had this National Emergency Coordination Forum, essentially bringing together all stakeholders in the nation's capital to talk about this issue. But on the show this morning, we're breaking it down. Now, those are the states from the 2024 annual flood outlook that are at high risk of flooding. There are more states on that list. So we're breaking it down to the states this morning, just to look at what states are doing to ensure that the floods do not wreak the havoc we've seen time and again. On the program this morning, we're joined by the Commissioner for Environment in Ogun State, Bwala. Oresoya joins us virtually from the nation's capital, Abuja. Welcome to the morning brief, sir.
Thank you very much.
We saw what some would say the testing of the microphone in February. There was rains, it was like flash floods, and we saw what the floods did in Ogun State. Ogun State is perennially flooded from time to time, particularly those border areas, Isheri and the rest. I understand that there are plans to construct thousands of drainage channels, culverts, and the rest. So give us a picture of just how prepared Ogun State is for the flooding, which will definitely come or has come already this year.
Oh, yes, definitely the flood will come, and Ogun State is prepared, and that's why we gave the flood alert. And flood alert we will try to remind ourselves, both the government and the people, and even our contractors, our farmers, on our obligations and how to manage the season very well. Once we know the flood will come, the next thing is how prepared are we individuals. So on the government side, yes, we try to explain our preparedness, and we try to advise farmers. And our flood alert this year focus mainly on how to maximize the rain, where we're looking at the positive side of the rain, not the negative side. Negative side is the flood, which we all look at but for us in Ogun State, we're looking at the positive side because we believe what we need to do to avoid flooding. Yes, on the government side, we're trying our best, and we believe our people also can complement that through various things that we emphasize there. I don't know if you want me to go ahead with those areas.
Okay, I'd like to speak to the specifics, really. And I mentioned the construction of almost 3,000 meters of drainage channels, mini bridges, and culvert across the 3 senatorial zones of the state. So the question is, has that been done? Now, the essence of this conversation, Honorable Commissioner, is to enlighten people and also raise awareness across states so people can begin to think, oh, this is what we need to do, this is what government is doing, so all of us can work together. So you can speak to just how far work has been done regarding those mini bridges, drainage channels, culverts, and you can talk about the positive side as well.
All right, thank you. The first thing is understanding the pattern, the flood pattern in our state, in Ogun State. We have our peculiarities. The northern part, the flood pattern in the northern part of the state is usually the flash flood because of the hilly nature of the northern part of the state. While in the southern part of the state, which is the area you're referring to, especially the border towns between Ogun and Lagos, those are areas where we have what we call the coastal flooding. The coastal flooding comes usually from around September, October, and it's as a result of the high tide that disallow the flow from Ogun River into the lagoon. So you have a retention of water flowing from Ogun River. And don't forget that Ogun River transverses the Ogun State, and I think that the state takes its name from that river. And we have various tributaries from the state that feeds into Ogun River. So we are the main collector that cuts across the state into Lagos State. So if the river if there's a high tide, then there's a lockdown, and then you have the coastal flooding around that area. So preparedness, in the northern part of the state, we have to open up the channels where this water can flow through, and so that we make sure that the runoff from the torrential rain that will come between March and July, July has been the peak period for this rain. This high volume within a short time can have an easy passage on its own, so that the constrictions along those passages have to be removed. Naturally, flash flood will remove or will attack anything that is obstructing it, because it can be very destructive on its own. It's an abrasive flow. It wipes off anything along this way and causes erosion. So, but if in some areas where you have buildings along that channels, we remove them, remove the buildings, and we remove all these shanties along the drainage channel, and even people dumping refuse. Because of the high runoffs, people are tempted to dump refuse in it, believing that these runoffs will carry the refuse downstream to somewhere else. So we make sure that the drainage channel, that's what we call desilting. We continue to desilt these channels. Some of them are arch channels, some of them are line channel. Line means that the one with the concrete are the lines one. The one without the concrete are the arch channels. Silting continues every year, and we make sure that we continue to desilt most of these channels periodically. So that is going on. That is what we stated in our outlook, the total length of desilting areas running 2 kilometers that we're going to do. It's not just the state government, even the local government are encouraged to do the same thing. And the communities, these channels are about 3 of channels, the drainage channels, the primary, secondary, and the tertiary trunks. So the secondary and the tertiary trunks are the main responsibilities of the government on its own, while the tertiary channels, which is what we call gutter in front of people's houses, is the responsibility of the community and residents. And we ensure that the local government must compel people to make sure they clean their own tertiary channels. So that is for the flood, that is the flash flood, and that our preparedness continues. It's a routine assignment, and we must continue with that one. But the other one, which is the coastal flood, comes naturally because there's a natural event that comes with it. And the majority of the areas where we have these coastal flooding, they are mainly wetlands. These are wetlands, and people have developed these wetlands knowingly or unknowingly. Some people even got approval with a poor sense of judgment from the previous government, giving approval to people building on wetlands, which are the prevalent area within these shorelines and within the border towns in Ogun State, talking about Alagole, Kara, Isheri, all of those areas. They are mainly floodplains, and people have approval. Yes, you can build in floodplains, but there are specifications that you must be given before you build on floodplains. You need to be advised on the kind of elevation you must have around that area. Majority of the people build there, those even from government estates, those who have approvals, they build there without the knowledge of the kind of elevation under which they must exist along the floodplain. So now we have inherited the problem. All we are doing right now is adaptation and making sure that we advise people to leave those areas during this period to avoid any form of casualty. Otherwise, you elevate yourself in your room. I mean, restructure your house and make sure you elevate above the normal base. So this water will come every year.
And those concerns are valid, Mr. Oresanya. But besides the deluge that is experienced between March and September every year, residents along these floodplains that you have described also live in perpetual fear of the release of water from the Ogun Dam that is managed by the Ogun River Basin Development Authority. It seems as if that the federal government and the Ogun State government were not on the same page as far as that release of water is concerned, being the reason for the release of for the flood. Are they in agreement now, and is there, are there conversations about how to manage the release of water, or an alternative, coming up with an alternative solution, permanent solution that will stop that flooding as a result of the release of that water?
Well, the issue of release of water is what we monitor on a daily basis with Ogun River Basin, and especially this season. Whether water will be released from the dam or not is all taking a decision between the devil and the deep blue sea. If you don't release water from the dam can crash and make the situation worse. Don't forget that dams are actually part of the reason why you have dams is to control flooding downstream, to detain water and use that water for irrigation and for other purposes upstream, and even for supply of water potable water to the community, and the water is retained. But during the peak of the rainy season, you have excess water that must be released. And what that water will do, normally, if there is no high tide, the water will naturally flow through the Ogun River pathway and empty itself into the lagoon. But by the time you have the high tide, the release of the water will aggravate the retention, the spread around the floodplain. And it will want to reticulate itself and retain itself around that flood. That's why it's called the floodplain. That plane is there so that during the high tide, normally, that is where the water will stay until the tide goes down and the water will move, regress into the lagoon. So, but because people are already staying there, it makes things worse. So right now, what we do with the Ogun River Basin Authority and the community, and we were all there, it was a joint press release with the Ogun River Basin and the Ogun State government, is that, okay, fine, the water will be released more often towards the period when we are expecting the arrival of the high volume of water. And so that by the time they are releasing the water during the peak, the tide period, the high tide period, the volume they'll be releasing that time will be lower. And I think that this year we are going to have a close monitoring with the Ogun River Basin Authority. We have the expected time of arrival of the high water volume coming upstream. Don't forget that this water is coming is transboundary. It's coming from the northern part of Africa and coming to Sokoto, coming down to Ogun State. And Ogun State is the one that empties it through Lagos into the lagoon. So Ogun River is very, very important for us. And it's not Ogun River alone that is surging to Ogun State, onto Ogun River. We have the Ikere Gorge Dam also that discharges right into Ogun River. And we have several tributaries without dams. Then they come through this Ogun River and they go straight to the lagoon. So these areas are very, very vulnerable. The shore, the coastal towns, they are very vulnerable. And we're not leaving them alone in this. So it is not just Oyo Dam alone. Oyo Dam release of water can only aggravate what must happen naturally.
Let's talk long term now, because it's like repeat and rinse. Issues of flooding and rain is not a surprise. It shouldn't be a shock. The magnitude is what can be relatively different across board. So, because we know that some of these things are human-induced, when you talk about urban planning and poor planning and all of that, as a state government, what are you doing in the long term to minimize as much as possible? As I said, some you can't really predict how far-reaching, but some you can see clearly that with this being here, every year this thing happen is going to, cause problem, maybe loss of lives and property. So on a long term, how does the Ogun State government intend to reduce the things that are controllable to manage this situation?
Thank you very much. If you look at this, what we're doing right now, before you get approval, building approval in Ogun State, you have to get a drainage clearance. The drainage clearance, what we're doing drainage clearance for the Ministry of the Environment is to look at your drainage channel. We'll look at the level of the collector river, or the water body around your community. If the level of the main river is at 2 meters, for example, your flow, your building must be above that river. So your drainage plan must have shown the elevation under which you have to operate. So before you get building approval in Ogun State, you must have what we call the drainage permit. The drainage permit will have specified for you the elevation under which you must operate. You must build your drainage channel in a particular area. And where your drainage will empty into will give advice. And so the physical planning people will compel you to make sure you channel your drainage into a particular collector, secondary collector bodies that will take you to a tertiary one. So drainage permit is compulsory in Ogun State. Now, two, if you must build in floodplain in Ogun State, also the permit, will specify completely for you that you can only have a foundation at a particular level in floodplains. Or some of the floodplains, yes, we can build there, but it must be under certain specifications. So it's a controlled development, we say right now, having a flood management in mind. And apart from that, what we do again is that we give advice on the weekly basis now on the rainfall pattern. Not just for flood control alone, for farmers, so that farmers can know when to plant, when to harvest, and the rest of it. And construction workers also, because this affects construction workers. So it's the flood, the rainfall pattern in Ogun State right now is to advise both farmers, construction workers, even school children. We advise day schools must shut down and not open because children will be tempted to walk in the flash flood. So we give advice to the Ministry of Education on when to advise certain schools, particularly in the critical 16 local government in Ogun State.
We don't want to see what happened last year where a 14-year-old died during flash floods. So it's important. But two clarifications I need to seek from you. One, those 3,000 mini bridges, culverts, and drainage channels, have they been built already, or they're still being built?
It's work in progress. What we just said is that we already have approval and we have a fund released for them. So it's as good as it's only a matter of time you start seeing those bridges there. So some of them have commenced. For example, in the Isheri area, Kara Isheri, we've started the dredging, the real channelization of the river from River Valley Estate across even the Lagos end to make sure that water from that area will regress easily. Right. So that the kind of devastation we had last year around that River Valley Estate will not have that devastation this year. So if you go there right now, and I'm sure
pardon me, will they be built just in time before the peak of the flooding? All of them?
Exactly.
All the 3,000?
This point is channelization. It's an art channels. We are opening up the art channels with swan bogies that are working right there now. They've been working. It's a very long channel. And I'm sure for that area, which is a coastal area, the outlook for the problem should be around September and not just now. It's going to be around September. But before September, this thing will have been finished, will have been completed.
Now, sir,
hopefully.
Construction of drainage channels are good, but I wonder if that would be an enduring solution to the peculiar flood challenge in Ogun State. And as you have rightly pointed out, Ogun River has many tributaries. So is the government, in conjunction with perhaps the federal government, considering experts' continuing call for a consideration of the dredging of the Ogun River?
Absolutely, absolutely. All I've mentioned now are the short-term immediate measures that we're doing. There is still a medium and the long-term measures. The medium-term measure is about having a standard drainage plan, okay, for Ogun State itself, so that all over the state, so that we can have our channels clearly defined, elevations clearly defined. So an integrated drainage master plan, we are developing that, and that will probably be ready. And we are about giving that to a well-informed company, global consultancy company that is going to do that for us in Ogun State. And we are doing this in conjunction with the federal government. What we're going to do in Ogun State is between us and federal government. Then the rechannelization of the Ogun River itself, yes, it's one of the key things that must happen. And I can tell you it's not a small thing. It's a major, major one. And it's going to going to have a good impact between Ogun State and Lagos State. So it's between the two states. But we are pushing it so fast in Ogun State because we have the greater exposure than Lagos State to this river impact. So there are other medium and the long-term programs going on between Ogun State and federal government.
So are there things like some level of support for people that, sometimes get affected by this flooding time and again? As you said, sometimes it goes out of control.
Well, to reduce this potential for annual lamentation, that is why we give these advisories, and we make sure that we give early enough to let people know what will happen in your area. I mean, if, for example, we are telling you that in September, October, you're going to have flood in your area, we expect you by now start planning. Either you elevate, you reconstruct your house, elevate, maybe you want to use temporary plants to elevate yourself, or prepare for the plants. Just like Noah, prepare for the rain that's on the by the way anyway. So it's like given the information. So we expect you to act on those information so that by the time the rain comes, in September, the flood will come. The coastal flooding, it is where you have this devastation of retention of water for a longer time. And that is where we want people to evacuate. Evacuate, have an alternative residence before now, or elevate, so that we will reduce this lamentation. Right. But just like you rightly said, there are some recalcitrant residents who will still be doubting that nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. And when it did not happen, they go on air, they go on social media, start lamenting, government is doing nothing, government is doing nothing for me. What have you done with the advice given to you? What have you done with it? We've given enough, almost 6 months notice to tell you when this problem will come. So, but for those people, we still have a moral obligation towards them. We cannot allow them to die, so we must evacuate them and take them to our camps.
Well, Mr. Naturally, the government will need to take the lead and ensure that funds that are budgeted for environmental projects mitigation, they're appropriately spent transparently, and so people see that these monies are being put to use. The other part of the clarification I was going to seek is about the Ogun Dam. It's been said that we're wasting the potentials of that dam. It could be used for irrigation, could be used for power generation. There's even a tourism angle, but there's so much more that could happen. So on the one hand, is there controlled release now, maybe on a daily basis? Is that what is happening right now? And what are the plans? We're winding down anyway, but to ensure that the water is put to good use, generate electricity, use it for irrigation.
Well, yes, I agree with you that the potential is enormous for the dam, and I think that's why the dam is constructed there. And as more dam as we can construct in Ogun State is welcome. There are other potential dams we can have that will give us electricity, irrigation, support the food security programs, and the rest of it, and even tourism, just like you said. But I think that's a decision. Yes, we can give advice to the Ministry of Water, Federal Ministry of Water Resources to maximize this. But we are working in conjunction with them. And I can assure you that there's a control release now, and we are working with the leadership of the Ogun River Basin Development Authority, because we feel the impact, our people feel the impact most, and that they cry to us in Ogun State. So we'll make sure this time around the release of water is controlled. I can assure the rest of the state, please bank on it. We're not going to leave Ogun River Basin Development Authority alone. We are working together with them during the period when they're going to have this devastation impact. Before we know the tide will come, we'll tell them what to do before then, and that we'll work together. Or don't let me use the word, we'll tell them what to do, but we work together. There must be synergy between us, and we'll ensure that we stay ahead of that synergy to make sure that they do the right thing. Absolutely. And the impact will be.
Thank you so much. I hope we can take this word to the bank, so people at least, not the river bank this time, so they know that there's controlled release of water as you've promised, and there's more partnership. Yeah. I would like to thank you so much, Commissioner for Environment, Ogun State, Mr. Ola Oresoye. I wish you the best as we head towards the peak season of the flooding.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, there's been so much conversation around the economy, particularly with the latest cybersecurity levy that was just announced. What is the issue really? Is this government doing what it says it will do or otherwise? We'll find out in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It's now time to switch gears to talk about the state of the nation. We're being joined by the former DG of the Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council and a fellow Nigerian Academy of Letters, Dr. Osuntokun. He joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Well, Nigerians are reacting to a lot of things. So I want to see how much of those things we can cover. Perhaps the first place to start is this issue of levy. The cybersecurity levy that people are reacting to, that the NSA's office had spoken a few days ago that should be implemented. It's a 2015 legislation that was amended apparently in 2024, and the argument now is that there's a lot of these levies happening. So what's your initial reaction to all of this?
Well, it's quite difficult to unpack many of the issues that have dominated the airwaves, for almost the past 1 year. What I would like to know that is there a precedent for that anywhere in the world. You know, where you have a tax on cyber security. That is fair. I don't know much, but I like to have an answer. You know, I don't know anywhere, but I'm prepared to be educated where the idea originated and why. So, but I don't know, it's an additional burden as you know, on the people, on the public. And this is not the best time to start piling, you know, more economic pressures on the people. But really, at the end of the day, what is fundamental is that when you ask the people to make sacrifices, right, you yourself must be seen, you know, to be exhibiting a sense of austerity, you know, in what you do. I don't know, I mean, there's a mixture of policies, you know, conflicting policies, or policies that ends up being a double jeopardy, you know, but that's I don't know, first, if I want to talk about it, right, I like to talk competently on how it came about, where is the precedence for it, and whether that justifies, you know, imposing another body.
Do you have the impression that, like some people do, that there are too many taxes?
Exactly, that is the point I was making. If you're having a lot of taxes, you know, in a situation in which there is nothing in return, that is a big deal. Look, my own attitude to these things is that, look, societies go through challenges and crises. So to that extent, Nigeria is not unique. It's how you respond to that crisis that matters a lot. If you are saying that you are going to give student loans or whatever they call it, you are going to do this and that. That has not been done. And then you want to immediately now, while those are in abeyance, you now want to introduce another tax on the people. That is a conflicting, and where is the pressure coming from for you to do that? If you are going to do it, I doubt that this is the proper time to do it. You know, maybe in a year's time, and with all of it, it came out from the blues. People's mind were not prepared for it. You just add all of a sudden that there is going to be this on that, you know, arbitrarily. So I said, well, whoever is going, the way government is addressing Nigeria's issues is lacking in one respect. And that is a consideration for those who will bear the burden of policies, you know, because the kind of policies we're having now is more like, you know, it's not give and take. You are just piling the burden, you know, is on one party alone, and at a time that people don't have, almost everybody has economic pressure here and there. So from that perspective, I don't think I mean, look, I don't think the time is proper.
Yeah.
And you know, on top of it, you know, we are not a military government. It's you owe people explanations. Why am I doing this? Right? So, but you have not had that.
And some representatives of government have been speaking to that. We'll get to that, but perhaps it's important to also point out that there are a number of exemptions from the cybersecurity charge. Let me just go through maybe 5 of the long list. Loan disbursements and repayments are exempt. Salary payments are exempt. Intra-account transfers within the same bank or between different banks for the same customer, they're exempt. Intra-bank transfers between customers of the same bank are exempt. Other financial institutions' instructions to their correspondent are exempt. And it continues, about 11 But in response to why perhaps government is doing this, some of their spokespersons have been trying to provide an explanation. And what we're hearing is that, you know, that space, the cyberspace, is pretty much ungoverned, and everybody is vulnerable with hacks and, you know, financial fraud, some of which happen, you know, with the person who is being stolen from being helpless. And in fact, government systems are also exposed. And the NSA is saying we want to own this space. So to that extent, should we, you know, take a second, do a double take on the goal, the overall goal of this cybersecurity charge, and say perhaps there is a crucial objective that government wants to achieve?
Yeah, but what you have said, right? I have no reservation about the government taking charge of the cybersecurity section. What we're talking about is charge. That's completely different from imposing a charge. If you want to take over any function, right, on account of security implications, so you are taking it over. But that does not, that shouldn't result, you know, in taxation. But let me confess that what you have just read out, you know, I can see that the government gave it a lot of, you know, consideration. You know, quite a number of people or transactions are exempted. In fact, when you were reading them, I was wondering them, so who is left? Who is left to
about
pay
16 exemptions, actually.
Who is left to take to pay the levy? So, but I crave your indulgence. I have not read that. If I had, I wouldn't have, you know, stated some of the things that I did. But what you again said about security implications leading to its being taken over by government has nothing to do with tax. That is the truth. What has that got to do with tax?
It's quite interesting. I saw a tweet from Dr. Joe Abba, who was saying, you know, it might even be tricky to exempt or to abide by the exemptions, because banks might be a bit afraid and say, what if we exempt this and realize that we're in the wrong? So they may just charge everybody anyway, because sometimes the implementation of these policies are quite tricky. But I mean, that conversation is absolutely ongoing, and we'll definitely stay on that. But just about 20-something minutes ago, Mr. Peter Obi put up a statement about this on X as well. So obviously this is being escalated, saying that this is too much. It looks like the government is more interested in milking a dying economy instead of nurturing it to recovery and growth. But what I want to ask you is maybe leverage on your experience, because you were appointed political advisor to former President Olusegun Obasanjo in 1999 to 2007. At that time, now president was governor of Lagos State, right? And so you go way back in some sense, and we saw the back and forth between the then governor of Lagos State and then President Olusegun Obasanjo in issues of, you know, revenue, minimum wage, and the rest. It was a major battle. But now, over 20 years after, do you see, or do you agree with those who say the president is sort of replicating the Lagos model at the national level economically? Do you see anything wrong with that? Do you see a difference between the Tinubu of then and the Tinubu of now, basically?
You know, you see, that is actually where one of the problems, actually a large part of the problem, you cannot use the Lagos state model or any state model for your governance. They are all quite a different kettle of fish. And that is one of the reasons why the government ran into a lot of difficulties. Precisely trying to use that state government, apply it as governance at the national level. You are going to get into problems. All right? First and foremost, a governor can get a lot more things done if you are in the state. You know, more or less we have experienced, and in the letter, you know, you only have a situation on which there will be a conflict between the governor and members of the state House of Assembly. A lot of it had to do with power politics. So, but of course, the national level is all is a different kind of fish, for that. And even look, the kind of transparency, even if you do not wish to be transparent, right? There is a way that operating at the center, forces transparency to what is going on. If the Lagos State governor or government decides to buy jeeps for the Lagos State Assembly members, it probably will not attract the kind of things. So, there is a lot of this, like apples and oranges. There's nothing, of course, you can use the experience that you have learned while you are state governor, applying it to, but in terms of the substance of government, what you are going to do, what you are going to get, is a different kettle of fish altogether. So, and as I said, this explains the difficulties, often bordering on, naivety, that some of the policy decisions have been taken. Secondly, of course, is that the central government of Nigeria is not only different from the state levels, but the fact is that you have an omnibus central government. You have an all-in-all powerful government, which was not the intention of the Constitution. And as a matter of fact, without redressing that constitutionally, we are going to have a lot of problems. You see, many powers under the concurrent and residual list have been transferred to the federal government. Of course, a lot of that has to do with military dictatorship. Military dictatorship is top down. It's a unification control. So the era of military dictatorship has impacted negatively, on the Nigerian constitution and governance at the center. So, which is not, as I said, and again, look, I don't know whether it is the Lagos State experience that explains it. Look at the Lagos-Calabar coastal roadways. Now, of course, if you are a governor, you can choose to do any road you want to do. I doubt if it will attract it. But you look at this one, that apart from, professional interest, in what is going on, you also have to take into consideration the politics of it, or what you are doing. And why should it be your priority, for instance? I personally, if I were president, I wouldn't do so at this time. Committing $13 billion to a coastal rail, what? We have a whole lot of, let's say 70% or 80% of the existing road network in Nigeria is in bad shape. So the money, 10% of them, let's say 20% of what you want to spend on Lagos coastal, Lagos, you can fix, almost all the dilapidated bad roads in the country. And of course, the country will appreciate this but what you're going to call a legacy project. But I think you are reaching, I don't know, the kind of mentality that is there in the government about how about its priorities and how to go about it confounds me a lot. Look, for instance, I will not say that the vice president does not need a lodge, a befitting lodge, right? After all, the previous vice president was living somewhere. I don't think the place is squalid. So if there was a place which the vice president was living before, so what is the logic? When you do the cost-benefit analysis, what is the logic of you taking away $15 million to go and build a new vice presidential lodge? Look, this is what I'm saying. You have to reflect. All right. the rest of, look, this is why people, if they're asking me to tighten my belt, the country is bad, is this, and now we are doing something about it, okay, reflect it in your actions. There are things you should not prioritize as what you should do now in terms of how you address people's problem. How does building what does it do to you? It's an ostentatious project. So if the president sleeps in where, will he wake up differently?
So let's take it further within the context of what you're saying as to what you would advise the president, because when we look at the numbers from when he was inaugurated as president, which this month, 29, to make it exactly 1 year, the numbers are in the red, all the economic numbers, literally, almost the basic economic numbers. So it speaks to the fact that the government may be struggling, even though it says it's a temporary pain. So what should be done differently to reposition the country?
Almost everything. You know, my own position is that we have a systemic crisis, right, in which you cannot isolate one problem and solve it and leave it at that. We're talking about roads, talking about security, agri. We are headed in a situation of we are going to encounter, if we are not already encountering, what food security crisis. And one of the main reasons why we are having that is that farmers cannot go to their farms again because of Boko Haram, bandits and things. So everything revolves. Look at light, for instance. The small scale, that really is they are the backbone of the Nigerian economy. The small scale operators, organizers and things like that, they use generators. A lot of people use the available power at that lower level to get their business going. So my own position is, look, you cannot, there's no way you can isolate one because they overlap. In that situation, well, you know, what we are taught about in school is that you don't address it as a whole. If it is a systemic crisis, then you go back to where we should be, that you can do something about it, and it is a constitution. Right? Nigerians need a positive shock therapy. Even though everything argues for the fact of constitutional review, which people call restructuring. Now, restructuring, some people have capitalized and say, okay, you don't know what it means, you don't it's simply redistribution of powers between the first tier and the second tier of government. Why they call it the restructuring of power relations, right, between those two tiers of government. And it does not necessarily result in physical redrawing. You know, because I see this is where people are getting it wrong. It does not, the structuring they are thinking about is that you cut off, you make the second tier of government will be zonal, the Yorubas will be together, and all sorts of things. If you start like that, you are going to create a lot of crisis. And restructuring does not have in view that is what is going to happen. It may be consequential, right? Now, while you are trying to do it, it may result in the physical redrawing of the government, because this is the one area that people have been happening all along. That is not the restructuring. If you want to look at it that way, it is those who took Nigeria from the 4 regions in 1966 to the present 36 states that we have. That is if you want to look at the example of restructuring, which they claim they don't understand or whatever it is. Look at that. And many of those states were created quite whimsically, arbitrarily, right? In the Constitution, one of the criteria for you getting a state, first and foremost, is your ability to sustain that government internally. That you are providing, we go and read the 1963 Constitution, that you will be able, through internally generated revenue, to sustain what you want to. And that's, of course, the logic is simple. If you have that, you are not going to be a burden on the center. It will make you more accountable to the people, right? Because the money you are getting it from them, from the economy of the state. These days, they just go to Abuja, get money there.
And get the faculty.
First and foremost, so your citizens know it's like, well, you don't hold them accountability because that is...
So, pardon me, do you support a 615,000 naira minimum wage, state police, all of those things? If you say that states must be able to cater to themselves at this point, do you see them paying 615,000 naira minimum wage, having state police and sustaining it?
615,000. Well, that is a joke. I don't think that they mean it seriously. I mean, to be fair to them, that's a non-starter. But you see, well, again, I'm talking about Nigeria, and I know that will be an overreach. In other societies, right, it is a rational proposition that 615,000 naira today, when you convert it to dollars, how much do you get? Not much. But within this country that we are in today, that the government, I mean, look, Argentina, I don't know whether you follow what has been happening in Argentina. The president there overhauled the whole economy within a year. The rationality, everything about it. So, but as I was saying, you cannot have a situation in which you are using money to buy jeeps, a state-of-the-art Land Cruiser jeeps, for 400 legislators, and you can this is what we are saying. Because of that, it is one of the reasons you are unable to pay a livable wages.
And let's assume that this would be a test for what this government's response would be to restructuring. Speaking of which, when the current president was governor and local government allocations for Lagos were withheld, the governor was very vocal in his criticism of the federal government, saying that the decision to not respect the Supreme Court's decision on this matter is a disregard, in fact, a contempt for the rule of law. And in that context, state governors are saying, look, we're going to hold our own meetings and decide what we can pay as far as minimum wage is concerned. So when you consider this, another test for this government in its own advocacy for true federalism, either it's 4 regions, state police, shedding of more powers from the federal government. What are expectations from the current president, who was a strong advocate for true federalism before he became president?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I was smiling because I was there once. I mean, look, the thing that I noticed, you as a president there and subsequent presidents, there is no one who will become the president of Nigeria without the passive acquisites of power and so on as an individual. Who will want that decentralized? This is what I have noticed. That look, when you get there, it's difficult for Nigerian well, unless of course, I mean, you are like the guy in Argentina. The thing is, so how do I put it? You have so much power, so much resources at your disposal. So that is one of the reasons, right? That when they get there, it's difficult for a president to say, okay, why you're taking away powers from knowing fully well that you are going to be there in maximum 8 years. But that's not what they're saying. But it's the human spirit to do that. But the Lagos State example that you have given is very instructive. Look, in 1967, or even up to the early 70s, the local governments comprising Lagos State, the number of local governments was 20. The same with Kano, because they have an equivalence of population thereabout. Today, as we speak, Kano State has been split into 2. The original Kano State has about 40 or 50 local government?
44.
44. Jigawa State has about 30, 34 local governments, right? You add the two together, you get something like 70-something local government. This Lagos State here has remained, as 20 local government. But it all exists. The unfairness of it all was a military diktat. But again now, it brings us back to the issue of constitutional reform. In federalism, the standard is 2 tiers of government. You don't create a 3rd tier of government outside the purview of the state government. That is number one. I will come back to it. If you want to create a local government now, which was a point that Obasanjo was making at that time, you need to amend the constitution. Because the number of local governments in the country, 760 years, is there in the constitution. So you must be able to amend for you to do that. Now, but secondly, of course, is the fact that, and that, of course, goes back to the issue of constitutional reform. If you have constitutional reform, it is the business of the state to create local government. The local governments that they want. That was what, and politically, Tinubu was right. But legally, at that time, I don't think he was.
Mr. Osuntokun, pardon me, there's a point, because as we wind down now, there's something I need you to speak to as a matter of urgency. There are reports that President Tinubu may be back in the country after 14 plus days. The meeting he went for last ended April the 29th, but plus 5-6 days he was away, and a lot of Nigerians were wondering where he was. But there are reports that he's back in the country. But the point I'm trying to make is, you worked with the president, and there were debates around, should Nigerians know where the president is at this time? Should they not know? What is the standard, Mr. Osuntokun, as we wind down?
Well, there's nothing to add to that. Nigerians are entitled to know where their president is on a minute-by-minute basis. That is the simple answer to that. On a minute-by-minute basis. And of course, and the logic is simple. For instance, if Kenya invades Nigeria today, right? The idea is that the man who should take the decision must be in situ or where he is to respond to it. This kind of, you create a lacuna, in governance. We had a lot of it when President Bwala was there, and we all know the consequences of that. So again, this is what we're having again all over. I mean, and it's a simple, straightforward thing. The country, nobody is compelled to seek the office of the president. If you are the president of Nigeria, right, we deserve to know where you are at any time. But that is...
Thank you so much. Dr. Akin Osuntokun is the former DG, Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council, as well as a fellow Nigeria Academy of Letters, with other things you are that we can list right here. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll come back now. We're still talking State of the Nation. We're going to be joined by legal practitioner, and of course, Daniel Bwala joins us as we continue to espouse the issue of the State of the Nation. Join us again.
Welcome back to the program. And part of the concern about the State of the Nation was the president's whereabouts. But we can now tell you that the president has returned from his trip to the Netherlands. This has been confirmed by one of his aides, Mr. Bayo Ononuga. Of course, we're also getting that confirmation from the Twitter handle of one of the nation's national television channels. The president has returned to Abuja after his trip to the Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. And as we continue to reflect on the current state of the nation, we have joining us for this next bit of the conversation, lawyer and public affairs analyst, Mr. Daniel Bwala, who joins us via Zoom. Mr. Bwala, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And there's so much to talk about, Mr. Bwala. Of course, the cybersecurity levy, the continuing petrol scarcity, the electricity tariff. Some people are saying, not some people, it's a consensus view now that it appears the administration is scoring very low on sensitivity amid, the difficulty that Nigerians are already grappling with. How do you weigh in on this, Mr. Bwala?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning to your viewers. Depends on who is assessing and what is the motive behind the assessment. Just like you have the water in the bottle, and somebody will say it's half full, someone will say it's half empty. But what generally we should be looking at are numbers, right? And looking at also the context and perspective from which we look at things. Nobody, I think, is in doubt of the fact that when the president took that hard decision, which is a necessary decision, it's not a convenient decision, that there must be a temporal hardship. There must be a period like a period of childbirth. There must be a period of inconveniences. There must be a period of personal sacrifices. When you are confronted by a period like that, what is required of you is adjustment, because they say trouble don't last always. You will not be in that situation forever, but you will need to adjust. Because if, for example, you had a very good income coming to you, you have a lifestyle where you travel with your family on vacation every 3 months, you buy them choice food, you go to places and the rest, and suddenly you are told that this means by which the monies are coming are not going to last, they are irregular. Now you have to go by the books. You're going to have to adjust. And this is the basis of life. So I don't think the president is denying the fact that this is a period in Nigerians' life, in the life of the Nigerian people, where things are hard. He has said it over and over and over again. And what he has been enjoining the Nigerian people to do is to have faith in the government, believe in what we're going through, play your part where necessary, and let us move forward. Now, you have seen on many policy decisions of the government where even the masses, some of them, not all, take advantage of the situation and try to deprive other Nigerians of what would ordinarily be their benefit. We have seen that in price hike and in a lot of things. So I want to say, with respect to this, your question in a nutshell, it is not a hardship that anybody in Nigeria is in denial. But the promise is that the policies that are put in place in the long run will work for the good of Nigeria. And from when the policies were introduced, we have seen improvement, at least in the area of revenue, increased revenue, which has led to now the redistribution of this wealth across the states of the federation and local government. And the states have experienced what I naturally would call oil boom. Now it's up to them at their state level to also deploy these monies to alleviate the sufferings of their people.
Mr. Bwala, I like to call it an independent, so that that's the way you say you should describe it, because sometimes it's difficult given all the background and all of that, but your perspectives are always quite insightful, which is why I want to speak to the issue of the president's whereabouts that you spoke about, and you referred us to Section 5. There's been argument over whether or not where can he administer things from. You said according to Section 5, he can administer from anywhere, or that power can be transferred to any of his lieutenants, whether it's vice president and all of that. But the argument Nigerians are having, which is why we need your legal insight on this, is not that the president cannot administer the country from anywhere. It's just the fact that nobody knew where he was as citizens. His aides may have known it. His aide did not vote him. Every Nigerian, as far as after the election is concerned, is now our president. We deserve to know where he is per time. Is that too much to ask?
No, not at all. Every citizen has every right to ask of the whereabouts of a public official, not just the president, public official. And they also deserve the right to know. So let me, right off the cuff, say that the asking of the whereabouts of the president is not a challenge. Nigerians have not done bad by asking. And I think also that the presidency made clear at that time, after his trip to the Netherlands and Saudi, that he went to Europe. So Europe was where he was before he came, or he's on his way back to the country. And I think that he's in Europe is sufficient for Nigerians to know where he went to. If they want to know the nitty-gritties of where in the Europe, this is what the presidency will unveil to the Nigerians or release to the Nigerians with time. But let me give a context to why I said what I said on Twitter, and a lot of people try to misconceive, because what they try to do is they look at the history and juxtapose what I said. And they tend to think that because of history, we should be afraid of the law and the realities of the moment. And context is important because context matters. Somebody said that the president of Nigeria presently is outside of the country, and that because of that, the president is not in charge of the government, and that the Nigerian people are now left at the mercy of cabals. This was a television house that was analyzing it. And so a journalist called me later and then asked of my perspective. I said, well, I know you guys sometimes can misinterpret. I'll put out a tweet. You can write a story based on it so that if you deviate, at least I know my tweet that anybody can see. And then in that tweet, I said that the president is in charge of the country, he can govern from anywhere in the world. Now look at Section 5. Section 5 says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, the executive powers of the Federation is vested in the president, and subject to the provision of the law, he can discharge the functions of that office either by himself or through the vice president and the ministers of the government of the Federation or through the heads of the public service. This is the scope of the powers of the president. So what that means is that president may not be presently in Nigeria. He can be in Antarctica. But these agents of government that the Constitution gave them the privilege to carry out the functions of the president on his directive, when they are carrying out those functions, the president is in charge. If you proceed further to Section 130 of the Constitution, you will see where it says, there shall be a federation, right? There shall be a president for the federation. If you go down, it says that the president shall be the head of state, chief executive officer, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This is the scope of the powers. Now, whenever the president who has taken the oath of office during the pendency of the term as president is wherever he is in the world, as long as that president can communicate with the agents that I outlined or I mentioned here to carry out the duties, and that the president has not relocated, and that his travel does not exceed 21 days, that president is in charge of the country. That president can govern the country, and that president is in order. Because the president, apart from being the president, is also the chief marketer of the federation. And so some of the trips are official, some of the trips are private. Whether they be official or they be private, the president's power and charge and governance authority does not get extinguished because of geography. Because somebody said he's not in the villa. You remember that COVID gave us a very good perspective of understanding adaptation with changing times. Until after the COVID, we learned what they call, Zoom meeting, remote meetings, remote assignments. I am in England, but I run my law firm. So,
all right, Mr. Bwala, just to put, the reason was because the presidency never put out an information to the best of our knowledge as to where he will be after his visit to Saudi. We knew he was going to Netherlands and also to Saudi Arabia, but the confusion came because there was sometimes they say from here he will proceed here, but we didn't get that clarity. I think what we got the information of him going to Europe was just this outcry that we now had a release yesterday. Coyote.
Well, essentially, that's the question, really, Mr. Bwala. If we say that Nigerians employed the president, and President Tinubu has been described as a Democrat, true and true, and a lot of people leaned on that and said, you know what, we're going to follow through because we believe he's a Democrat. This was something they complained about during, the military era. In fact, it was complained about during former President Muhammadu Buhari as well. And people say, okay, maybe the military angle to it. So President Tinubu came and they thought things would be different. An employee will not go out of station for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days without the employer knowing where the employee is. Mr. Bwala.
You're right. But the difference is that the president is not an employee, because Section 130 said there shall be for the federation a president, someone who presides over the federation. I know your context might be because the Nigerian people voted him, therefore he's an employee to Nigerians. Perfect. In that context, I agree with you. But you see, the president will not, for example, be carrying out individual requests of the Nigerian people. He will carry out the request of Nigerian people that is circumscribed in the Constitution, because he is a president whose duty is to protect and execute the Constitution of Nigeria and carry out other functions for which the duties of his office permit. There are certain duties of the president that cannot be delegated. For example, when the president has to present the budget to the National Assembly or wants to address the National Assembly on the State of the Union, he has to do that himself. That when the president, for example, wants to carry out certain functions that are related to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces with the armed forces, he has to do that by himself. When the president has to declare war in another country, he has to do that by himself. And if he is going to allow his vice, then he would have transmitted the power, and then the vice can have the same power to be able to function. The president was away for a few days. So I am happy that you're understanding my context, because if context is not given to the reason why I put what I put out, people can give misinterpretation. And media houses have correspondents in the villa. So if, for example, you look at the official channel by which the government announced the movement of the president and you do not see, or there is ambiguity, I think that media houses can ask their correspondents in the villa to directly contact them and get to know where is the president, where is he proceeding.
So, Mr. Bwala, quickly, let me follow up on that so also we can do full disclosure. In fact, some of the aides were reached out to, messages didn't deliver, calls didn't ring through. That's on the one hand. When you say that the president is not an employee, he is. In fact, I will just quote what the president said when he was taking the job. He said, "I asked for the job." That's what the president said. So president implying that I am what your employee, I asked for the job, and that's when he now said, "Don't pity me." I'm sure you remember that statement. So to that, you've given the context which you made that statement, which is good. And you've also said that the Nigerians deserve to know, but I wanted to just put it clear that the president himself agrees that he's an employee. He says, "I asked for the job."
Let me tell you, I am sure that you do not have enough time for us to delve deep in that. You see, an employee is employed by the employer at the pleasure of the employer. There are procedures for the recruitment, and there are terms of reference. Do you know that there are demographics in the country that don't believe the president is their president, and they control the cyberspace and threaten people's life? To them, the president is not someone they employed. Two, an employee in an organization is bound by the terms of reference and from time to time reviewed by the employer. And the employee is entitled to salary. There are certain distinctive characteristics of employee that may not be applied when it comes to the presidency of the country. For example, the president will not ask the Nigerian people, do I sign this official engagement between Nigeria and another country, or do I travel and the rest? But in the case of an employee, you can't travel until you ask for permission. President only needs to let you know he has traveled. That's why I try to make a distinction with the concept of employer-employee. But the president is accountable to Nigerians, which is much more than just being an employee. And communication strategy differ with people. I do not think that the communication handlers of the president should keep away the information necessary for the Nigerian people about the whereabouts of the president. You may not go to the details of his whereabouts. For example, suffice to say the president, after conducting official visit in Netherlands and Saudi Arabia, has proceeded for a private trip in so and so place. Private trip is private. The president will not tell you I ate amala in the morning, I ate eba in the evening. But the president is entitled to certain privacy to say he has traveled for a private visit. What we as the Nigerian people are looking at is the law. While he moved on the private visit, is any of his conduct and activities violating the provision of the law? The law says, unless if the journey exceeds 21 days in a stretch. And you remember, 21 days in a stretch excludes official duty. Because if you look at section 145 or 46, it says only when you are proceeding on vacation or that you are unable to perform the discharge of your duties, that is when 21 days apply. But if the president is on official duty, and that official duty connotes him going to 100 countries, and it will last for 9 months, are you suggesting that during this period of the official duty, the president has ceased to be in charge or ceased to be the president of a country? The president is the chief marketer in any organization where you have a marketer. If you look at the bank, for example, and be advised by that, you discover that certain rules are different with marketers and those people in customer service. Because the marketers are believed to be people who should be fluid enough to move around for the purposes of bringing customers.
Well, Mr. Bwala,
the progress and growth of the organization.
Well, Mr. Bwala, for the duration of travel of Mr. President, it doesn't cease to be the president, but his itinerary, Nigerians deserve to be furnished with his itinerary for the duration of travel and know where he is at a material time.
I agree with you.
But let's switch to another subject as far as the state of the nation is concerned, which is the Lagos-Calabar coastal project. If you consider the flurry of reactions or the nature of reactions to that project, the middle name may just be controversy, one of which is coming from former vice president and candidate of the PDP, your former party, who says the president's son may be on the board of the firm that has secured the contract. And we know that the owner of the firm is the president's associate. Although we've had the Minister of Works come to clarify the bidding process and, the hurried nature which this contract is being implemented, this infrastructure is being implemented. But why don't we see the same zeal, for other federal roads? For instance, the failed federal roads in Edo State, for which the governor has gone on a back and forth with the federal government. Why don't we see the zeal also for roads like the East-West Road? If the expertise of high-tech is what is being considered for Lagos Coastal Road, the expertise of high-tech is also needed for areas that are challenged with ocean surges, like Ilaje communities in Ondo State, for instance. So why don't we see the same zeal and hurried nature deployed to roads that are begging for attention in Nigeria?
For example, with respect to what you said, you see, this necessity of the road is only unimportant to somebody who does not come from these coastal states. But anybody who comes from a state where this infrastructure will run through, to them, there is no priority greater than that. When it comes to needs in the country, there is no part of the country or segment of the country that is not calling for one need or the other. 3, if you are making a case that high-tech should also be awarded contract in other routes and the rest, you are welcome to make a case for them. And they can get as much as they can get if they win on the basis of practice and procedure. Mentioning, for example, the son of the president as being a member of the board, we're just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Sheyi Tinubu is not a public officer. If you look at the public officers law that govern, it is a public officer who must not allow conflict of interest, who must disclose his asset, who must do A, B, and C. Sheyi is a private citizen like you in that studio. If the law of your organization permits for you to be involved in a company, there is nothing wrong in you being involved in a company that end up winning a bid or end up winning a contract with the government.
Mr. Bwala, pardon me if I may come in there. You say the president's son is a private citizen, but wouldn't that be an element of nepotism in that in the award of that contract, if you consider that it's public infrastructure?
No, it is not, and that is where accountability comes. So he who alleges must prove. If you believe that there is nepotism in the award of contract because the son of the president is a board member, you are to furnish facts that will support that. You see, we are living in a time where even conjecture can read. And I want to believe that we should not get to a point as a country where we vilify children of public officers just because they are children of public officers. When somebody raised that issue, a journalist raised that issue with me, I say, Sheyi is not a minor. By every law in Nigeria, Sheyi can as well take up arms, join the Nigerian army, and go to war. And the fact that his father is a business does not take away his own personal pursuit of peace and happiness in life and in business. And we copy this democracy from the advanced countries. I hope you know when Donald Trump was president, his children, his in-laws, and everybody was involved in his government. It was argued by CNN and Fox. And at the end of the day, the conclusion was that where you determine conflict of interest is if you can show that the person wins this or wins that because there was an influence of social and social person in the process or in the securing of that job. Has anybody, the setup or whatever is the organization, been able to show that the reason why high-tech got the job is because Sheyi influenced it? Nobody has been able to show it. So should Sheyi now resign from the board of the organization because that company got the job? Sheyi is not a public officer.
All right, so
now,
I guess.
let me say this. Allow me. Let me say this.
Okay.
the former vice president is somebody I respect with the deepest respect. And all the effort that people made to ensure that they bring our heads together failed, including the skewing of information around what I tweeted about the president. But I recall that the former vice president, in the build-up to the 2019 election, when he was asked that if he got the chance to privatize, will he privatize certain institutions of government to his press? He said, why not, if they meet the requirement?
Wow. All right, we can go on and on about the issue of Sheyi, but I guess the fact that I think it's stronger, the stronger issue is the fact that the president has a good relationship with Mr. Gilbert Chagori. Of course, you know the COP28 issue that caused all the wahala that we saw him as a confidant in that particular conference. But I understand we don't have so much time. I wanted you to speak to but if you can do it in 30 seconds, I don't mind. The numbers are all up. Headline inflation between when he took over and now is over 10%. Food inflation is over 15%. Whatever you look, the numbers are in the red. How much hope do you think this government is giving? 30 seconds, Mr. Bwala.
Yes, I believe that the inflation rising or falling is predictable based on decisions of government and the reform that the government is undertaking. I have not seen any reform in the world that is convenient, like I told you from the beginning. And nobody is celebrating hardship. Nobody is celebrating the pains that the Nigerian people are going through. The promise, like you asked, the hope, the promise is that the policies are working. And the president is about to enter the second year of his administration. Remember, his government is for 4 years. I want to tell the Nigerian people on my own honor that the president's reform will work for the good of Nigerians in the long run.
Well, Mr. Bwala, we could continue to, come up with follow-up questions on some of these issues that you have raised, but we're totally out of time. We'd like to thank you very much for your time on the program and for always answering our call whenever we require you to speak to these issues. Mr. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for coming on the morning brief.
And an independent.
Maybe add to that a smooth operator as well.
An independent.
I mean, just see the operation is quite
smooth. Bwala makes it easy. Sometimes difficult to introduce him, but that's why I like to stick with independent and a legal practitioner. So.
Well, we just hope that doesn't change in the coming months. Mr. Bwala will be willing to come answer more questions.
But thank you always, as always. Well, thank you.
All right. So that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let's remind you that the president is back in the country after his trip to the Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. And we're back again tomorrow with more. I am Bukola Koka.
Thank you so much. He's back from Europe, precisely. He's done with Netherlands, Saudi Arabia. He's back from Europe. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
It's important to clear that. And I'm Kayode Kikulu. Have a great day ahead. Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with Channels Television for all of the breaking news you need. Goodbye.